It's U of L Today on 93.9 The Ville. Here's your host, Mark Hebert.
And welcome to U of L Today with Mark Hebert on 93.9 The Ville. Hope you stick around for the next half-hour show for the program that's all about all the great stuff going on at the University of Louisville. We'll get into that here a little bit later on. But what do we got on the show today? Well, he's the doctor for the Dalai Lama. That's right, the Dalai Lama has his own physician. His name is Barry Kerzin, and he's in Louisville as a guest of the U of L Medical School, and because he wanted to make a return appearance on this radio show, and he will. Well, that's not really why he was in town. He's just in town to meet with the students from the U of L School of Medicine. But first, the University of Louisville campuses are little cities within a city, 22,000 students and 6,000 employees. The campuses are also some of the safest places in town, but it never hurts to keep pushing for better safety measures and training. Aaron Graham is from the U of L Police Department. He's here to talk about a couple of initiatives that ULPD has going on. Aaron, good to see you again.
Good morning.
You're a major these days, aren't you? What are you these days?
Yeah, I'm considered to be a major.
You're
yes.
considered. You don't consider yourself to be a major?
It's a title.
It's a title. Well, congratulations on the promotion whenever that happened. Well, let's talk a little bit about what's going on. School's getting ready to start back up. What are you telling the freshman students when they come into the campus?
Well, essentially what we're trying to make sure the students understand is that probably for the first time in their lives, and under university rules itself, is that they are in control of their own lives from this point on. Mom and dad are no longer around. So what we try to emphasize is the fact that they have to assume some responsibility for their own safety. However, we're there to make sure that they do remain safe while they're on campus. So what we try to do is introduce various tools that will actually aid them in being safe, making sure that they know how to notify us, and again, just taking the responsibility for a lot of things that may not have thought of in the past.
Right, and there's some things on campus that you started up, the police department has started up, and you told the freshmen, I went to one of your orientation sessions where you talked to the incoming freshmen, tell them what's going on campus, how to reach the police, those kinds of things. So what are some of the new things that are going on campus that all students should know about? Well, and faculty and staff too, I suppose.
Well, the first thing is that we start at the basics. So anytime that we need to disseminate information, it's important that they sign up for the Rave Alerts, which is the text messaging system that the university utilizes to at least disseminate any information that we think is important, whether that be criminal or emergency information or weather information. Then the other thing that's kind of new to the campus this year, and this is something that we've been emphasizing to the new students that have come to orientation, is the fact that we have begun decommissioning a lot of the old blue lights that were on campus.
So explain what the blue lights are for our listening audience.
Well, the blue lights were actually sporadically placed around all the areas of campus and all three campuses, and it was a one-way line to police
The blue
dispatch.
lights marked a telephone,
The blue
basically.
lights marked a telephone or an emergency phone.
Right.
So what has actually occurred over the course of the past few years is that is based on old technology. That was old telephone technology, so we're talking about hard copper telephone lines. And then we also looked at the data, and we determined that there had not been a true emergency notification utilizing that system in about 15 years. So looking at the money that we spent in the maintenance of those, it was decided that that money could be repurposed to something that would be more conducive to today's student population or today's university population.
And that is?
And what we've introduced is an app. It's called the Rave Guardian app. It is something that is available on all the phone platforms and through all the services. And what it does is that it gives that same emergency notification with a few added pluses here and there. Key thing is that it sets up a timer. It has interactive texting, so they can text with us around the clock, and it's always going to be answered in live time. But when all fails, the replacement for that emergency blue light is a panic button that they can actually depress or activate, and it automatically comes into the university dispatch, and then we can determine what the issue is and how we can respond to it.
We're talking with Major Aaron Graham from the U of L Police Department. We're talking about some safety measures on the U of L campuses, and we're going to talk in a few minutes about a new video that they've put together. One of the things you mentioned was the Rave Guardian Alert, and you mentioned the timer. Can students, as I recall, can go on there and it calls into the police and says, I'm at the Province Apartments right now, and I expect to be at Grawemeyer Hall in 20 minutes, and if I don't get there, send somebody looking for me? Isn't that one of the things
Well,
it does?
what it actually does is that you set a timer. So if you are going from point A to point B, you set that timer. And that is basically an estimation of how long it's going to take you to get to that final destination. And if it is not reset or turned off, then it becomes an audible alarm to the police department. And at that point, if the app is actually registered, we know whose phone is actually alarming. And at that point, we have a GPS location. So we will have a general idea of at least where that phone is and most likely where that person is. But there is a series of protocol where we actually try to contact that person.
Try to call them first and
make
see,
sure
hey,
that
you
everything is
okay?
okay. Make sure they
Right,
just forgot to turn off that timer.
Right. Well, that's a handy-dandy little tool, I would think. Are any students even using that, or are you trying to get more of them to sign up for that?
It was introduced about 2 years ago, so we've seen a steady increase in the number of people who are downloading it. And this year we've made a big push in conjunction with a lot of other units within the university to make sure that this becomes more widespread and hopefully more universal.
And is that the same system that gives us weather warnings and those kinds of things from tornado warnings, this Rave Alert system, or not?
Yeah, Rave Alert is where you receive all the emergency notifications.
So anything weather-related,
weather-related,
shooter on campus,
boil water advisories for people down at HSC, because that's where we see that primarily. So anything that the university deems important, and what I try to emphasize to the students is that this is also the information, or this is also the system that will be utilized if we have those dreaded snow days and classes are either delayed or canceled.
And can people who live in the area around, for instance, the Belknap campus or live downtown near the Health Sciences campus, can they sign up for this as well? So they would get the same alerts, or is it just for faculty, students, those folks?
It's anybody that is affiliated with the university community. So that means faculty, staff, and students.
All right, but not the folks that live in the neighborhood.
Not the folks that live in the neighborhood.
Okay, so if they want to get all those notifications, they have to sign up for a different app, I'm assuming, right? To get.
Well, there is a system that is set up through Louisville Metro Safe.
Right, that's right, Metro Safe.
So that covers the entire city.
Let's talk a little bit about this video you all have put together, this active shooter video. As you probably know, and most folks know, there have been several instances on campuses across the United States. So what proactively did the UofL Police Department do to try and get information in the hands of faculty, staff, and students at UofL?
Well, we've had a program for the last, I'd say, 5 to 6 years where we've actually presented active shooter response. And what we discovered is that it was a canned or it was a packaged information program. So we thought that it would be best if we actually created one of our own that was more UofL-centric. And so we proposed the idea about 2 years ago, and after finally receiving their approval, we produced the UofL-centric video that includes all UofL personnel, and it was a joint operation by the Louisville Police, University Police, Risk Management, and the Department of Communications, the academic department. So we utilized all UofL personnel and students in the production of this video, and we finally have it completed. It is now on the CART Safety website, and it is being emphasized to new students to at least look at it, and if there's any other questions or inquiries, then they can go through the normal process where we can actually present the full program.
And how realistic is it?
It's very realistic. It's utilizing the same information that has basically been disseminated by Department of Homeland Security. So it's very simple, but the key thing is that we make it more pointed just because it is the university community. So everything that you see is actually something that any of our community would actually encounter on a regular basis and would actually try to make sure that they would know how to react.
So is it a scenario-driven thing where you pretend that there's a shooter on campus, or is it just someone telling us, all right, if you hear the notification and get a text that there's a active shooter on campus, here's what you do, or what is it?
It's a little bit of all of that. The key thing is that we try to emphasize the 3 responses that we explain to everyone if there is an active shooter situation, and that is run, hide, or fight. And what we try to make sure that they understand is that if you understand the geography, you understand your environment of this community, then you would actually know where to go, and how to react. So all that information in terms of how you would react is included in that video, and with a few ideas in terms of why you need to actually take the necessary precautions when you receive that information.
Does UofL train on that situation, those emergency situations? Do you have tabletop exercises at UofL and other things where folks like the police department, communications, those folks are involved in figuring out, all right, if, right now, shooter comes on campus, we get the notification, what happens? Who does what?
We have the general presentation in education. We also have tabletop exercises, which there is one planned for this coming November at the HSC campus. And right now, it's still in the early stages. We're actually planning our first live exercise that would involve not only University of Louisville personnel, but also Metro government employees as well. So that would be fire, LMPD, EMS, emergency management, and that right now is being planned to take place at the School of Medicine.
Okay. All right. Again, we're talking with Major Aaron Graham from the UofL Police Department. Statistics on crime at the University of Louisville. We always talk about how safe the UofL campus is. Is it?
Yes, it is. And the thing that I always like to point out is the fact that the university campus or campuses are oases within the city itself. So there may be crime that may be occurring outside of our perimeters, but inside the university itself or inside our particular areas, it is exceptionally safe.
And what backs that up? Are there numbers that you have to report to the federal government that shows that it's a safe place?
We report every fall to the Department of Education. It's a requirement. And so all those numbers of all the reports that are taken within our jurisdiction are given to them, and then they're disseminated to the general public as well. So anybody can have it. And what we've seen so far is that the numbers are actually beginning to drop in certain areas where we've seen some issues before, which is a good thing because that points to the fact that maybe the educational effort that we've tried to push is actually taking effect.
And what are those areas where that have been problem areas? It's not been violent crimes like armed robberies, and there haven't been any murders, and I don't even know if there's been a murder on a UofL campus, but like armed robberies and sexual assaults, those kinds of violent crimes. I know those numbers have been low for years and years and years. So what were the problem areas on campus, and what numbers are going down?
Well, the main numbers are what we consider the numbers that we report to the Department of Education are always historically low. So those are all your violent crimes. Some of the secondary numbers, which are not reported but we still keep track of, point to our number one crime, which is theft. And
stolen laptops,
stolen cell phones, car break-ins, and those numbers, we've actually seen a slight decrease over the last 2 years.
And you think that's just education efforts, or don't have as many criminals on campus?
We would like to think that it is part of the educational effort, which has been universal. So it's not only directed to the students, it's directed to the parents of the incoming students, and it's directed to all the student employees and all the faculty and staff as well. So this is something that we think that the entire community has a part in at least helping in that education.
All right. Anything else that you'd like to let folks know about the University of Louisville Police Department? You got a new police chief, right?
We have a new police chief.
Is he on board yet?
He should be starting next week. We'll probably try to talk him into coming in here and face
chat with me a little bit.
Chat with you.
You're going to have to warn him beforehand.
Well, I think he'd be. He's highly capable.
He can handle
of dealing
himself?
with you. He can handle you.
Okay. All right. And he's coming from Cleveland State?
He was the chief at Cleveland State, and prior to that, he'd worked for Ohio State University as well.
All right. Well, let's have a very safe semester there, Aaron Graham, all right?
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right. Appreciate it. He is an American, he's a doctor, and he's a Buddhist monk. Yes, he's all those things. He's also the personal physician for the Dalai Lama. His name is Barry Kerzin. He's in Louisville on a return visit. He's been here many times, and this time he's a guest of the UofL School of Medicine. So, Barry, good to see you again.
Thanks, Mark.
You're looking
Happy
good.
to be here.
It looks like you're keeping the weight off. That's good.
Yeah, feeling good.
Fairly
doing
healthy.
Okay. Yeah, doing good.
So you're following doctor's orders, I guess? By
not so well, but a little bit. I'm exercising almost every day, so yeah.
All right, so I introduced you as an American, a doctor, a Buddhist monk, and the personal physician for Dalai Lama. Does that pretty much sum it up?
I think it does.
So what do you do for the Dalai Lama?
Actually, I think he does for me.
Okay.
Because on a deeper level, I think he's really looking out for me. And that's something that almost puts goosebumps right now on my body and my skin. I'm his physician, so I'm charged with kind of responsibility with one or two other people to keep him healthy. Now he's very interested in several different types of medicine. Very interested in modern medicine, Western medicine, and he's also very interested in Tibetan medicine. So we take care of him from the Western or modern medicine perspective.
How old is the Dalai Lama?
He's 83. He just had a birthday on the 6th of this month, July 6th.
And how old are you?
70 as of last November 1.
So you're not that much younger than he is.
12
So maybe
years.
he's taking care of you. Maybe he's really your doctor.
Yeah, I think he is, actually. Yeah, I do think he is, yeah.
What are you doing in Louisville?
Well, I was invited by ULSOM, University of Louisville School of Medicine, to give the white coat ceremony keynote address, and that'll be this Sunday, the 29th of July. And that's for the incoming freshmen into medical school. They're literally given white coats. Mm-hmm. It's a rite of passage kind of thing, and I'm going to give them a pep talk on compassion to try to help them weather the storm for the next 4 years through medical school.
We'll talk a little bit more about compassion here in a minute, and some of your discussions that you've had in the past and the books you've written. But when you talk to UofL students or any students from that are going into medical school or that are in medical school, as a former doctor yourself, what do you tell them? What specifically do you tell them?
Yeah, well, I tell them firstly that it's a noble profession, that it's a very special relationship with a patient who's usually hurting because they're sick, so they often are hurting emotionally also, frightened and anxious, and to be able to navigate forward to try to help them heal as a partner is a very special relationship that very few other people have. So that's one thing I tell them. I also talk to them about taking care of themselves, so-called self-compassion, to realize that they're not perfect, they're going to make mistakes, and on the one hand, that's okay. On the other hand, to try to learn from the mistakes, not to repeat them again, but not to beat themselves up when they do make mistakes.
And you were a doctor in Washington State, is that right?
Yeah, you have a good memory, Mark.
I'm trying to remember. I knew it was on the West Coast. I couldn't remember where.
Yeah, it was the University of Washington.
Okay.
That was years ago. Currently, I hold a number of different positions, affiliate professorships. One is at the University of Washington, Tacoma, and the other is at HKU, Hong Kong University, a visiting and honorary professor there, and other places also. So I teach around the world, mostly in universities and medical schools, but I'm also teaching in prisons. You may remember this in Japan for adolescents, adolescent prisons. I lead meditation retreats, sacred pilgrimages on a very special island, Shikoku in Japan. So I do a variety of things. We're doing a lot of leadership programs for business leaders. We're also setting up a program for December with Bill Peduto, who's the mayor of Pittsburgh, to work with their law enforcement chiefs on compassion and resilience. And I'm also doing we're engaged in training 16,000 UPMC, University of Pittsburgh Medical Center nurses in compassion, resilience, and mindfulness. So we're getting busy.
You're getting around a little bit.
Yeah.
We're talking with Barry Kerzin, who's a Buddhist monk, a doctor, and an American, and the personal physician for the Dalai Lama. He's in Louisville. He's going to be talking to the medical school students, the incoming medical school students at the University of Louisville. You mentioned the reason I asked about when you were a doctor in Washington. At the time, when you were a practicing physician and also teaching at the University of Washington, did you tell the students there, you know what, you've got godlike powers? Use them wisely. Did you ever say that?
Yeah, I didn't use those words, but I did say that you have tremendous influence over patients. So be careful what you say, be careful with your attitude, and make sure you develop this sense of partnership with the patient.
And as you're 70 years old, so you've gone on for several years now teaching and doing training and talking about compassion and those kinds of things. Have you seen a change in the medical school students and those coming out of medical schools around the United States and around the world? Do they have better bedside manner? Do they have better compassion?
I think the answer is yes. 5-10 years ago, if I would have asked an incoming group of medical students to medical school, have you ever had any exposure to meditation or mindfulness practices, I would have had a few hands out of 150 people. So a couple days ago, I asked that question to 160 new incoming freshmen into UL, University of Louisville School of Medicine, and we had about 2/3 of the hands go up. So there is something changing. Young people are being exposed and recognizing the importance in their life of mindfulness, sometimes meditation, and certainly compassion. So there is a change. I also see when I work with younger faculty now and younger administrative people, deans and vice deans, I find that many of them are interested and have actually some experience with these things, with mindfulness and meditation. Times are changing, Mark.
And I know you practice meditation, I assume, on a daily basis, don't you?
I do. I practice about 2 to 3 hours every day.
A day?
Every
I can't
day.
find 5 minutes to even tie my shoes, Barry. How do you find 2 to 3 hours a day?
I wake up early, and I've prioritized it, Mark. It's like a runner. If a runner is spending a half an hour or an hour every day, running, and part of the time is getting ready, getting to and fro, they can't miss it because they need that kind of endorphin rush. And similarly with meditation, you don't get an endorphin rush, but you get this good feeling. It sets a tone for the day. And if you don't do it, you realize something's missing. So you make it a priority and you just make the time. And I've been doing this for years and years, so it's a habit.
So it's unrealistic, though, for a medical school student who is probably working a 16-hour shift to begin with to set aside 2 or 3 hours to do meditation and to do some mindfulness exercises. So what do you tell the students or the doctors down at University of Louisville Hospital about how they can better take care of themselves in a short period of time?
Well, in terms of meditation, which is just part of the whole picture, I tell them, meditate for 5 minutes. And we actually did it. So one of the questions from the students 2 days ago, the incoming students at ULSOM, was, he said, I don't have much experience with meditation. How do you do it? So I said, well, let's do it. And so we did it and I watched the clock. It was 4 minutes. You could hear a pin drop in that room for 4 minutes. It was amazing. So I tell them do it for about 5 minutes every day. Usually the morning is best unless you've worked the night before because your mind is more settled, it's more quiet. The other things are, in terms of taking care of yourself, is to, cut yourself some slack. Forgive yourself for mistakes. Try to learn from them. Try not to repeat them, but not to beat yourself up, not to feel guilty. To develop what I call healthy self-confidence, which is putting nobody down, not putting yourself down, not putting another person down. Try to, know about that and then try to move in that direction in your life. And then maybe lastly, try to remember that everyone that you're meeting as patients, they're having a hard time. And to remember that, even if they're a little bit so-called difficult, maybe angry or difficult, remember that it comes from their own pain and suffering. And if we remember that, it's a little bit easier to be compassionate.
I'm talking with Barry Kerzin, who's been here before. He's the Dalai Lama's personal physician. He's also a monk. Did the Dalai Lama anoint you, or how does that work? How do you become a monk? Did you have to go through years and years of study, or how's that happen?
Yeah, you have to kind of be ready, and that readiness is determined by someone like the Dalai Lama. So the Dalai Lama did ordain me. As
so ordination, just like becoming a priest or a preacher, right?
Same.
Okay.
As a fully ordained bhikshu or monk. We have a novice level and a fully ordained level. And I went in, and usually he does this with 100 people at a time. I was solo. I don't know why, but he set that up. And I was supposed to be ordained as a novice monk. And we did that, and it was early in the morning. And then I went out, and his attendant served me some breakfast. And then I'm ready to leave, and then I get called back in, and it turns out he wanted to give me full ordination right there and then. Usually you wait at least a year. Some people never go to full ordination, but he did it an hour later.
Well, what do you think? Did you pay him off, or how'd that work? Did you give him $100,000 and say, hey, I really want to be a full monk?
I think he thought maybe I was going to skip out otherwise.
So how does it work for you personally? Here you're a monk, which a lot of folks think of as a ages-old, ancient rite kind of thing. They practice ancient rites, and yet you're dealing with modern medicine and trying to keep the Dalai Lama healthy. So how do those two worlds collide for you?
Yeah, I'm a modern scientific person, Mark, and that's how I look at everything. Buddhism has 3 departments, if you will. First is science of the mind. Psychology is working with the negative emotions and finding ways to turn them positive. Second is philosophy. Who are we more deeply? These are philosophical questions, nothing to do with religion. And then third is more religion, prayer, and things like that. I'm much more involved in the first two. I see myself as a very modern monk. I keep, as all monks, fully ordained monks do, 253 vows. So that I do.
253?
253.
You know, we live by the Ten Commandments. I'm Christian. I don't know if I can do 253 of them.
Well, the main ones are just like the Ten Commandments.
Okay.
And the other ones are more subsidiary.
They're subsets?
They're subsets.
Okay.
How to walk, how to eat, how to dress, that kind of stuff, which I consider a little less important. The most important things are to be a good person. You know, not to lie, not to steal, not to kill.
Similar to Christian values.
Very similar. The Ten Commandments are very similar to our main vows. Very close.
You've written a book centered on compassion. What do you talk about in that book, and what is compassion to you? What does it mean to you?
Yeah, compassion basically is the wish, and when we're able, the action of relieving suffering. And that's what compassion is. It's very similar to love, but love is defined a little differently, but in practice, they're very similar. Love is the wish and the action of increasing happiness. So they're actually the same, very, very similar. How to develop that then is what I talk about in the book. No Fear, No Death, The Transformative Power of Compassion, my new book that came out a couple months ago. One of the important ways is to recognize our negativities, our anger, our jealousy, our pride. First, to learn how to recognize them, how to turn in. And that turning in is mindfulness, to observe what's happening in our inner life. When we recognize anger, particularly at its early stages, then I teach in the book, I write about techniques and methods to then work with that early anger to slowly transform it, not to suppress it, into its opposite, which is tolerance or patience. And similarly with jealousy, to turn it into its opposite, appreciation, and pride, to turn it into humility.
Couple other questions I've got to ask you. All right, you're wearing this robe that's a sleeveless robe for those of you who can't see it. Do you have to wear that everywhere, or do you wear that everywhere?
Everywhere except if I'm showering or sleeping.
So how many of those different robes do you have?
I have 2 sets.
2 sets.
And on the
so you wash them every other night, or what do you do?
No, I wash them, I'm embarrassed to say, probably every few weeks or months.
Oh, man. Well, you don't smell. You don't smell too
well,
bad, Barry.
I've got some under stuff on. That gets washed frequently.
Oh, that gets washed more frequently?
Yeah.
Okay, so you wear that all the time. Okay.
Pretty much all the time, except I'm doing athletics.
Okay.
So if I'm swimming or playing tennis, which I love to do, then I'll wear shorts. Otherwise, I wear this all the time.
And the second thing, you're jetting all over the world. How do you do that? How do you pay for that? Do you get a salary from the Dalai Lama, or how's that work?
No, I get no salary. I've been doing medicine. I'm still a doctor, by the way.
Okay.
I've been doing charitable medicine for 30 years. I don't take a penny from anybody. So all my traveling, which is extensive, 7-8 months a year, in Japan 3 times a year, U.S. 3 times a year, in Japan 2 or 3 times a year, in Hong Kong, in Russia, in Mongolia, and then sometimes in some European countries. The inviting institution, usually a university, always pays for my airfare and then puts me up in a hotel or someone's home.
So UofL is paying for this trip?
UofL SOM, the School of Medicine,
School of Medicine is
paying for this trip, yes.
Gotcha. So then that's how you get around the world. All right. Well, You lead an interesting life, Barry Kerzin.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Hey, I appreciate you being on the show again, and thanks for coming to UofL and talking to our students.
It's always great to be here, and thank you very much.
Thanks for listening, and go Cards.